who started the company After Fund. They're here to speak about the way in which we can do good in the world, inshallah, by leaning on our history for the future. Taking lessons from the Islamic Golden Age, taking lessons from the seerah of the Prophet ﷺ and the innovations of the past, particularly the waqf. It's not a concept that, we hear about it, Wazarat al-Awqaf. It's like this historical concept. And even during the time of the Prophet ﷺ, there are narrations where the Sahaba would say everybody would have a waqf. So many Sahaba. It's not a rich person thing. Only the rich leave awqaf. It was a common person thing, and we know the Masjid al-Nabawi was a waqf that came from 2 orphan boys. And the Prophet ﷺ said as a waqf. Umar ibn al-Khattab, same thing. Most of the Sahaba that we know had endowments, awqaf. So the brothers here, inshallah, are going to give you inspiration on that and actually practical application of it in the firm that they started. MashaAllah. Barakallahu feekum.
Can you just fix this? Okay. Yeah. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I'm Dzanan, and pleasure to meet you. It's my honor to be today with you. It's my first time in Boston. I come all the way from Europe, from Bosnia. Bosnia is built on awqaf. The whole country, the capital city, Sarajevo, there's still the legacy that's been there for many years and that we use every day. I'm a software engineer and entrepreneur who previously started 2 companies, one in the US, one in Berlin, in Germany. The company that I started in the US, alhamdulillah, got acquired. The company that I started in Germany is still growing, alhamdulillah. And today I'm together with my brother Omar Yunus. We're building a startup that's called After Fund that is been used from people all around the world, from more than 10 different countries, and that has been presented at University of Oxford earlier this year. Today I want to share with you some lessons from the Islamic Golden Age, some lessons that we can all apply today to make our Ummah better, what we need to change with concrete steps, and how can entrepreneurship help us in all of this. Exactly 1 year ago, I was walking down the streets of Cordoba. And while I was walking down the streets of Cordoba, I could see the relics of, the legacies of the Muslims from the Islamic Golden Age. I could see, the things that Ibn Khaldun left, that Ibn Hazm left, that Ibn Rushd left. But I could also see, and it really reminded me of the time when we as Muslims were at the top of our civilization was at the top. And Islamic Golden Age presented time where not only Muslims flourished, but we all collaborated together. All different religions collaborated together to create better communities. And then I asked myself, okay, we were there at one point in time. But if we ask people right now about the current state of the Ummah, most of us would say that the current state of the Ummah is usually pretty bad. And then we start saying, okay, it's pretty bad. The problem is there is nothing we can do. We don't have anyone to rely on, especially if we take a look at all the situations that are happening all around the world and with our brothers in Gaza and Palestine. And then we say, you know what? We need a leader. We need a leader to appear that will lead us and solve all our problems. But that's unfortunately a victim mentality. And that's how Muslims did not think before. And I believe that one of the first things that we as community that we need to do is to ditch this victim mentality, is to ditch the mentality where we are dependent on others, where we expect someone to to help us, where we beg for donations, where we are the lower hand in the whole story. And I think when we take a look at the leaders in general, during the Islamic Golden Age, leaders emerged naturally. They didn't expect leaders to appear and to lead and solve all the problems. People would combine different skills and they would become leaders in their own niches. Back then, you would have a Muslim who knows mathematics, philosophy, psychology, astronomy, economics, but he would also be well-versed in Sharia, in Quran, and everything else. And this led to multidisciplinary approach where people combine different skills to create additional value. Just like that, today, we have so many other skills that we need to apply. We have entrepreneurship, we have finance, we have economics, we have content marketing. And taking lessons from the Islamic Golden Age, we need to start applying these skills in creating new values, where everyone can position themselves as a leader by creating new value. You might be good at content marketing, you might be good at entrepreneurship. And this way, instead of having a single leader that's leading and solving all our problems, now we have a decentralized effort. Now we have a decentralized effort of many leaders who are working on different things and bringing value to our communities, that are tied by the same bond, that are tied by the Quran, and that are tied by the Sunnah of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. After we ditch this victim mentality, we can start, seeing what problems we have in our community to solve with entrepreneurship. And I had a friend who actually ditched it, and he went away from that victim mentality, and he came to me and he said, look, I want to build an app. I want to build something that's going to contribute to the Ummah, right? I was like, great, alhamdulillah. So what is it? And he was like, yeah, I want to build a prayer times app. And I'm like, how many of you already have so many prayer times apps, and is this the best we can do as Muslims today with the technology that we have? So instead of like just having these ideas of what we could do, we could really start identifying problems in our communities and start solving these problems. And I would say that's the second thing, because all entrepreneurship journeys start with frustration. It doesn't start with I have an idea. It starts with I feel frustrated because of something and I want to change that in my community. And the third point that's very important is having the proactive mentality. And I was really bothered by this. Why something needs to happen for our ummah for us to wake up? Something happens and then we react. Something happens and then we react, and then something happens and then we react. Why? And when something happens, like we can't change back the time. We can take a look at the current situation in the world and how many situations will appear in the future if we don't start building something now. And that really led me to these 3 points, really led me and my brother Omar to start changing this and to start with new initiatives and to build the company that's called Afterfund to actually solve these problems. So the first thing I want to talk about is when we as Muslims are talking about charity, and when we as Muslims see fundraising campaigns that we have, most of them are urgent appeals. You see some pictures of children who are crying and children who are dying. The deadline is always yesterday. We needed the money yesterday. And we have this like, please donate, And then we give. Next week, next month, next year, again, the meals that we provided are eaten, the stipends that we provided for orphans are spent. Then we have another urgent appeal again. and again, and we give again and again, again, same problems. Problems are not getting solved, and we keep giving over and over again while the same problems still persist. And I asked myself, does it really need to be like this? And 3 years ago, alhamdulillah, I was walking down the streets of Medina. And at that point, I didn't even know that Usman, radiallahu anhu, had a hotel in Medina. A hotel which proceedings go to charity on behalf of Usman, radiallahu anhu. So whoever stays in that hotel, after covering the costs, all the proceedings go to a charity. And that keeps on creating new good deeds for Usman radiallahu anhu, but also for the community. And then I asked myself, how is this possible? Because, you know, during the time of Usman, there weren't really modern hotels and all the technology that we have today. So I was wondering how they came up with this. And I realized that during the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, people would plant palm trees. And these palm trees would produce dates. They would sell these dates every year and give to charity. And that way, with a single palm tree, they would be doing continuous good. So Usman radiallahu anhu also had a palm orchard that was used for those purposes. Part of the proceedings were used to give to charity. Part of the proceedings were used to plant even more palm trees. So the next year, they would give even more. And the next year, they would give even more and more. And when Saudi government came, they started using some of those proceedings to start building a hotel in his name. And now Osman radiallahu anhu has a hotel in his name that's continuously also working for him. And this concept is the concept of awqaf, of waqf. A lot of people say, you know, in Islam especially, that our good deeds are multiplied tenfold in the akhirah. But the Sahaba would actually understand how to multiply their good deeds in this world as well. And that's how they were doing this. And this system was actually at some point so advanced that during the time of Umar ibn Abdulaziz, you could not find anyone to give zakat to. They would have these machines who are constantly working and producing new good deeds, new impact, new meals, new everything, that when the time for zakat came, people didn't know where to give that zakat to. Coming back to today, coming back to the technology that we have today, we see that our Ummah is in the state where we are still in this urgent appeal phase. And we wanted to change that. We wanted to build something that's gonna use today's technology and that's gonna use the principles of the Sunnah. So we built Afterfund, and you can check Afterfund on a website. It's afterfund.co. The way it works is it's a platform where your donation does not get spent immediately, but your donation gets invested in halal funds made up of real estate and companies all around the world. And while your donation stays invested, the profits continuously support the cause you picked over and over and over again. So let's say instead of buying 100 meals with $100, those $100 would get invested and would stay invested and would provide new meals over and over again. Over a lifetime, you would end up buying 30 times more meals than if you would just spend it immediately. And this concept was actually, completely built on this waqf system, where nonprofits, we partner with nonprofits, we partner with Islamic centers, we partner with universities, we partner with masajids, we partner with charities, where they can come and say, look, we want to create sustainable funding, we want to create awqaf for these projects. We would create them and enable anyone to actually invest and donate in this way, and to start creating these continuous good deeds. What's really interesting in all of this is that this can be actually a tool to bring back the time of Umar ibn Abdulaziz. Because, for example, let's say we create a fund, Waqf fund here, for meals for the hungry in Malden, right? And we fundraise for it once, and then that money gets invested on an annual level. The profits are providing meals for the hungry, such that we don't need to fundraise for it ever again. We solved that problem. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, next one. Let's say we need, for this masajid, we need electricity bills, we need imam's salary. Instead of fundraising over and over again, we create a Waqf fund, we fundraise for it once, invest it, and profits on annual level provide enough such that we don't need to fundraise for these things again and again. And moving from there, this can be applied to anything. We can start solving these urgent appeals, and then we can move on to the more strategic things. We can start creating awqaf for research. We can start for more strategic projects as well. This can be applied to just about anything, for Islamic research, for Islamic sciences, for scholars, for any kind of stipends. So this is just one example. Omar and I created this based on these lessons from the history, and the reality is that anyone can start creating these initiatives, not only with After Fund, but like with different things, because each one of you have different skill set that you can utilize. But this is just one example, how we first ditched that mentality, that victim mentality, because if we were to wait for institutions to build something like that, we would still be waiting. Instead, we took the initiative. We said, okay, we want to change this. We want to build this. And once we build it, people start from 10 different countries all around the world. We started changing their lives. And there is a beautiful story that my brother from Bosnia called me 2 weeks ago. And 2 weeks ago, there were catastrophic floods in Bosnia. It was a national catastrophe. More than 20 people died. And there were urgent appeals. And these floods created 2 orphans. But last year, with a charity from Bosnia, we created a Waqf fund just in this way for orphans. People donated, and the Waqf fund grew. So now when the floods happened and these orphans were created, the profits from the Waqf fund immediately provided stipends for them, and no one needed to fundraise for them. And not only that, but the profits will continue to provide stipends for these orphans until they reach maturity. And inshallah, at that time, we could not predict what will happen in the future, but we thought proactively. And this was just one example on how proactive thinking and how it can really change our communities. When everyone is in panic, when everyone is, fundraising, everyone is in urgent appeal, those orphans are getting a message, don't worry, you're already settled. Why? Because someone thought proactively. And lastly, just want to say that without entrepreneurship, these kind of things would be really hard to do. And a lot of people, for some reason, think that entrepreneurship is evil for whatever reason. They connect it to capitalism. But Sheikh Yasser Qadi, yesterday, on Friday, gave a wonderful example, and he was also talking about the importance of this. And when I was listening to him, I was like, "Wow, this is exactly what we are living. These ideas are what we live every day." And he said that capitalism is limited to this life, where the money is end all be all, right? But we as Muslims, we need to think long term. We as Muslims, we need to think beyond our lives. And when you think like that, your incentives really change. Your actions really change. And what's really important is that young people, the next generations, our generation, start with entrepreneurship, with these ideas, because we need to start now to have something in 5 years. We need to start now to have something in 10 years, in 20 years. What's happening right now in the world that we are all discussing did not happen overnight. It took years for that. It took years for strategic planning. It took years to actually do that. And if we don't start now, we're going to just keep running in circles and nothing's going to change. Nothing's going to change. So we as new generation, we need to start building new initiatives. We need to start creating new ideas. And even this is a fun fact. Ibn Khaldun, 300 years before Adam Smith, has said that the wealth of a nation is not in the minerals in the ground or whatever. The wealth of a nation is in the labor, is in value creation, is in the work. And we need to start working. We really can't wait for anyone to solve our problems. We need to start with these initiatives. And that's what it really boils down to. And lastly, I just wanna say that Ibn Khaldun had this theory of cycles of civilizations, where he said that every civilization rises to the top and then starts declining, goes to the bottom and then rises again. And when we were talking about the Islamic Golden Age, a lot of people would say that we were at the top at that point. Now, when we ask the Ummah, a lot of people would agree that we are around the bottom. But this is actually an opportunity for our generation to start creating fundamentals for the next rise in the cycle. And I personally would rather be in this point of history than be at the peak and then you see how everything collapses. Now is the time when we need to lay out the foundations for the generations that will come. Because even entrepreneurship and all these initiatives are fully aligned with the hadith of our Prophet ﷺ, who said that the most beloved people to Allah are those who are most beneficial to other people, to the communities. And this is what we actually need to work on. This is what I wanted to share with you. I thank you for listening. I thank you for being here. May Allah reward you all. I pray for our brothers in Gaza. I pray for our Ummah. And I hope that we, as Ummah, will start when working on new initiatives, will start creating new value. And if anyone here has any idea or wants to start their own project, company, startup, in any way, I'm here. I'd be more than happy to provide guidance. I'd be more than happy to provide any kind of advice, because our communities actually need that. Thank you once more.
MashaAllah, takbir. So we're gonna have 10 minutes of Q&A around it, or as long as you're interested. So does anybody have any questions or comments, inshallah?
Jazakallah khair, Brother Dzanan and Brother Umar, for accepting the invite and for coming to Malden. Very informative lecture. I had a question. I wasn't really able to understand the workings of this. Yesterday, I believe Dr. Amir, he mentioned that for a waqf, the principle should not be taken out from, right? The principle has to remain the same. So you mentioned if we are fundraising for operational expenses, for imam salaries, for our school salaries. Just for an example, if we fundraise $10 every Ramadan, instead of using that for that year, we are investing it in after fund. $10 is the principle. Like how does like one fundraising help us for yearly value creation instead of, because I just feel like we have to do multiple fundraising to even come to that level.
Yes, I mean, what would need to be applied here is exactly what during the time of Usman radiallahu anhu, he would plant palm trees, then he would use proceedings to give to charity and proceedings to plant even more palm trees. So next year it would be even more and more and more and more. So let's say if you say we want to solve a problem for our imam, you can say, okay, we want to solve this problem in the next 3 years, 4 years. And then you have a couple of fundraisers. And then as the time passes, the money grows, and part is distributed to imam's salary, part is reinvest it so that next time it grows even more. And at that point, at some point, you will get to the point where the full imam's salary can be paid out and you don't need to fundraise. But this is this way of like longer term thinking. You can't have it overnight, but if you start now, you can have it in 5 years. But if you don't start now, you're not gonna have it ever, you know. So that's the thing. And also depends on the project. I mean, if depending on the salary, maybe you can do it in one fundraising, depending on the amount. But the principle, yes, always stays there, and the profits are continuously supporting the cause.
And in cases where investments are not always profitable, right? So if the investments are all negative over successive years, does after fund suffer, or does it take away from the principle?
So we optimize for those things. We can plan them out, you know, that there can be a period where where investments might not grow as much, you know, but we can optimize that within the amount that needs to be fundraised, to kind of solve that. And Omar can give more information on this.
Bro, that's a great question. So just broadly speaking, you look at the long term, the long time horizon, and so while there may be like some years where there's a down year overall, especially in the way we invest, you look at like 7 to 10% roughly in terms of growth over the long run. So yes, some down years certainly, but overall you come to that level. And you give out your cash flows, you give out the resources accordingly as needed based on that year's growth. Does that make sense? Cool, thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum
Jazakallah khairan for sharing this inspiring project and story. I have a couple of questions. The first one, can you share some numbers about like the adoption for the platform? Just interested to see like, is Muslim you're really utilizing like this innovative idea to generate like more donations in a very innovative way? Question number two, as far as I understood, like this, whatever we put, it's donation and it's growing. Any plan to have this concept of having a loan? Like we have a lot of people, they have like 10K, 20K, 40K sitting in their bank account instead of like, and they are not interested in doing any like investment by themselves. So maybe give it as a loan and they can accept the risk for 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, where you can like generate profits and contribute like this profits as donation for another cause. Maybe they can pick. Jazakallah khairan.
Thank you so much for that question. It's a great question. Brother asked a very good question. So in terms of adoption, we launched this a year ago. So we are quite recent right now. We launched this a year ago, but what I can say is that currently a charity from San Francisco Bay Area is using this. We have an Islamic center from Chicago is using this. We have an Islamic center from New York State also using this. We have a charity in Europe that I mentioned in Bosnia who created the Waqf last year for these orphans. We recently also, yeah, I mentioned university, right? Yeah. So and also with this Islamic center, they had their like Quran classes for kids. And they actually did this, like they achieved the sustainability. They didn't need a lot of money, so we created like the pilot fund where they fundraised for it, and they have like their Quran program that's like now fully funded. They don't depend on any external fundraising. So in terms of other adoption, we have people from 10 different countries who are using this. We have people from US, UK. We have people from Switzerland, from Abu Dhabi, Malaysia, all around the world. So Alhamdulillah, you know, we have seen that, especially it's the newer generations, the digital generation, who can understand this. And we like when we created this, we told ourselves we're not gonna have anywhere please donate, because we're gonna let people figure out that this is actually providing value, and for whoever gets that, you know, they just join. And we don't have any like guilt-inducing photos of children crying, etc. In terms of your second idea, I think it's a great suggestion that we're definitely like technically we can support it, and we're looking to to expand with other features, inshallah. And that's actually going to be on our roadmap as well. Brother Omar, you want to add something?
Yeah, just very quick. That's such a cool idea, and thank you for that. So, just to maybe clarify how it might work in the future, your initial loan wouldn't be a donation, right? Because as soon as you give it to a nonprofit, it's now in the hands of the nonprofit. As soon as you give it to the Waqf, it's in the hands of the Waqf. But after that, the money generated from it potentially could that could be a donation on your behalf. That could be a tax write-off. Super cool idea. And inshallah, I mean, we'll put that on the list, certainly. Jazakumullah khairan.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
So it's a waqf is a good idea because when we come in this country, coming from we worrying about riba and all the stuff. So we collect the money to buy our place to pray, but the money sit in a bank for many years. And the property is going up and up and up every year. And when we bought the property, we're stuck again. We need the money and we have to collect again money. That's a good idea. Subhanallah, where you been?
May Allah reward you. Jazakallah khairan.
Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
Thank you so much for sharing with us this idea. Great to hear. SubhanAllah, we've been waiting for this for years. Just like one quick question and like another, just like something to think of. Maybe the one thing to think of is like just listening to After Fund like makes me think like, what is that, right? But listening to the word waqf, like it's everywhere in the Islamic world. If you've traveled anywhere, like there are like these lands and plantations and everything, right? So I don't know like how you guys could explain this or like have a name that is easier for most Muslims to understand. Just an idea. The question is like managing money is hard. And anyone who just like invests and like tries to stay halal as much as possible, it's a hard problem, especially if you're centering most of your investments in the Western world and even in the Eastern world. So how do you guys ensure that these investments are halal? Do you guys have like a board or?
Thank you so much for that question. In terms of the word waqf and the word after fund, we were quite surprised, unfortunately, that a lot of our people like who joined us on this journey and who created their accounts and donated and invested didn't know what a waqf actually means. And when I was on my plane to Oxford, when I was invited to University of Oxford, next to me there was a gentleman who was a senior product manager at PwC. He was a Muslim, and he asked me, "What do you do?" And I told him, "We were rebuilding the waqf system." And he was like, "What's a waqf?" And I was like, "Okay, we'll need some education to do here." But and this is why with Afterfund we're really focusing on what it does and how it makes the impact. And then we say, okay, this is actually based on the sunnah of our Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, because a lot of people are not even aware. We might be aware because we are in touch with those topics, but we have a lot of wealthy Muslims all around the world who want to use this, but that name is just not familiar. So that's one of the challenges that we have to overcome here as well. In terms of your second question regarding the halalness of investments, we use only funds and we use only investments that are already certified, halal certified by AWIFI standards that are set by Islamic scholars that are accepted worldwide. So the real estate, the precious metals, and the companies all around the world are already screened by Sharia boards to ensure the halal compliance. And what's more, the Islamic Center that has a waqf with Afterfund, they can always see what's in there and how it works, so it's fully transparent. And on the other side, the donors who donate, they can also see exactly what their donation is doing, and that's also fully transparent. So we think that transparency is a huge issue with especially Muslim donations in our ummah. So we really focused on enhancing that. And when people saw what it does, they were really into that. Like they can really see what legacy they're leaving, as opposed to just giving money in some box, which is a black box, and you don't know what happens with it. I don't know, Brother Omar, if you want to add something.
Yeah, the brother asked a question I just want to answer directly. You asked if we have our own Sharia oversight. So in addition to the halal screening, which includes its own Sharia board that signs off on the securities, on the actual things that we buy at a very high level, we have our own Sharia scholars who they look over every contract that we do, and they look over the transactions that we do. So it's not just what we invest in, it's how we invest and how we do business that is overseen from a halalness or a Sharia perspective. I hope that answers your question.
Jazakallah khair. Do any of the sisters have questions? If not, we'll just keep on with the brothers. Yes. Ladies are good? Cool, Muhammad. And got some questions here.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My question is about it's kind of more for me to understand the way you guys do it. So for example, let's say we start a fund for this masjid. Is it being invested separately from other funds? Because obviously the more capital there is, the more it's going to generate. So is it all in one bucket and then you guys do the percentages and be able to give back, or is it each in its own bucket?
Great question. So let's say that this masjid wants to create a waqf fund. First of all, we can create multiple waqf funds for different projects. We can say, okay, let's create a fund for imam's salary, for electricity, etc. Each of these funds are separate, and they're invested based on the risk for that particular project. You would have some projects that are like providing meals that need to be provided every month or every year, and then you would have some maybe longer term projects where you can say, look, in 5 years we want to achieve something, right? So these funds would be separate, and you would be able to track them separately. You as a donor would be able to see, okay, through this masjid I provide this many, I don't know, meals every year. I provide this many stipends for orphans every year. I provide this many imams' salary every year. And you would know the legacy that you're leaving. On the other side, the masjid itself would be able to see how those funds are growing and at which point achieve sustainability. Unfortunately, we don't have thing to kind of show you, but maybe after I can show you visually how exactly it looks. But yeah, to answer the question, they are separate and they can be tracked separately.
Jazakumullah khairan.
I don't know, Brother Omar, if you want. So I didn't. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And this is, by the way, this is how university endowments work. So if you have a college like Harvard, I actually remember somebody at Harvard saying this, if somebody wants to start a new program at Harvard, and this program costs, let's say $100,000, the donor would need to give $2 million. This $2 million endowment would fund a $100,000 professorship, because the Harvard endowment makes 5% a year. So the $2 million stays, and every year it makes 100,000 on average in investments, and that 100,000 funds the operating cost of the professor.
Exactly, and I just want to add something on top of this.
Please.
We currently have a finance PhD who is doing a research on what we're doing, because he said that he has not seen this model implemented in the way that we implemented it in Islamic world. And we have a finance PhD who is working on that, and he told us this information that Harvard University currently has a fund that's worth $40 billion. I think even more. Okay. A couple of tens of years before, it was in millions, if not just 1 billion. Look, the time passes anyway. These 10, 20, 30, 40 years passed anyway. Now they are independent. Now they're strong. They don't depend on any charity from outside. And we as Muslims donate hundreds of billions every year just through zakat. And things are not getting solved. And this time passes again anyway. If we were to channel just a small fraction, of this to these kind of donations in 10, 20, 40 years, imagine where we would be as a community, where we would be as Ummah. I don't know if anyone else. Yeah, brother, go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. So I got two questions for you. The first is, do you guys have a minimum fund size? Like what's the smallest potentially can be? And then the second question is, and I'm not asking this from like, oh, you greedy businessmen. It's more just about how does after fund the company remain sustainable? How do you guys make money?
Thank you so much. So just for the first question, do you mean from like the donor's perspective or the charity's perspective?
You mentioned like a fund for like the Quran classes or something. Maybe it needs to be like
Sure.
$50 a month. Like is there a minimum or a minimum amount that needs to be in any fund that you start?
There is no minimum amount, and that's one of the things that we want to tell people. Look, even with small, you can do a lot, and we have charities that start with like whatever they're comfortable with, 10, 50K, 100K, depending on what to start with, and the goal is to grow over time. Depending on the project can be a small project, a couple of thousands every year, or it can be a big one. So we did not want to put any restrictions there, because we understand that the Ummah needs this even on a smaller scale, And in terms of how we survive and how we like put bread on our tables from this, is we understand that Ummah is in great need, so we don't charge anything up front. We take a percentage on total assets under management, on around 1% on top of that, So we create new value, and then everybody benefits from it. And that's also one model that we saw from the from our Islamic tradition, that how it was used. So to compare this, let's say to any other donation platforms, even though we are not a donation platform per se, a lot of donation platforms are taking like 20, 30, 40% to cover their operation costs. So if you donate $100 somewhere, maybe $60 goes to the cause, $40 goes to their marketing costs, etc. And even those like who have like 100% donation policy, where every penny you give goes to the cause, we compare this impact with after funds. So let's say you donate $100 to average charity, provide 60 meals. With some charity you'll provide 100 meals. With after fund you will provide 3,000 meals with fees. So that's how we positioned ourselves. We are creating new value so that everyone can benefit, and the still impact is cannot even.
Awesome question. Thank you. Let me just add one small thing to the second question. That's about what the market charges. So for managing investments. So and we try to add a great deal more value on top of that. So we're.
Yeah. In other words, if you were to do this alone, all manually, you would pay the same. You would pay the same price.
Yeah. I think there's a really interesting idea that maybe is not directly related to the question, but I just wanted to put it out there. There is a non-Muslim who has who's done a study on something called long-termism. It's the idea that we should be investing now for major problems of the future. And if you're interested in why that is, let's hang out afterwards, because it's quite an involved discussion. Anyway, this gentleman who did his PhD at Brown and is really making waves at Oxford right now, made this idea, that had this suggestion that around 1/4 of our charity should be directed to long-term projects. In other words, in the Islamic parlance, 1/4 of our charity we should consider for awqaf. That's not exactly your question, and but a masjid can do whatever they want. They can add as much as they want to their waqf, but as individual donors, I think this is at least something to consider.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
So, Thank you for sharing the more inspiring story of yours and about the company. And I just looked into your website and I saw the last year's report, and you
We have that's like at the end of last year. We have a new report that's about to come out.
okay, yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's when we
also
were just
really
starting out.
amazing. You partner with other companies in different countries. So I want to know what are the geographical locations you are covering, and you mentioned about the investments, and usually investments give return in like long terms, like 10 year, 15 years. So what is your strategy after, like where you see after 10 years, what's your long term goal, or is any exit strategy for you?
So first of all, regarding geographic locations, we work currently with nonprofits that are registered in the US, but they can be operating anywhere. So for example, this charity is working in Bosnia, but it has a branch in the US, you know. Uh, so currently we work with these kind of nonprofits, but in terms of donors, anyone can donate from all around the world. Inshallah, we have plans to expand to UK and also globally down the road. But I think there is a great deal of how diaspora can actually help their home countries sustainably in this way as well, where we can create awqaf that continuously help our home countries and solve problems in our communities there as well, continuously. So inshallah, that's something also that we're looking at. In terms of the second question, I would give this one to Omar.
Yeah. So that's a very keen question, and I appreciate that. Maybe I'll answer this with a little bit of a story. When we first got started, there was a VC that approached us, a venture capital company. They make investments in early stage companies. And they said, hey, we'll give you this money so that you guys can build your company. We'll slap some AI on it, and then we'll sell it for $1 billion. And we had absolutely no interest in that whatsoever. We are mission-driven entrepreneurs. Exits are entirely possible, but they're not a part of our DNA. We've been doing this for a year. We've been dedicated to this. Right now we're bootstrapped, which means we're using our own money to build this thing. And that's because not just that we believe it, but that our mission, our sincere and utter mission, is to rebuild the Waqf system, not just for ourselves, but for humanity. Muslims one day can be leaders in doing good on this planet. And after that, all the other problems go away. Yeah.
I,
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you for bringing up this topic. I think, as we can see, everyone, mashallah, is interested for this topic. So I want to talk from a more practical implementation. So if we were to walk out of here with our first step, what would that be?
As a masjid, as a community, for implementing this particular
Or
project.
even as an individual?
Mm-hmm. Do you want to start with this? Maybe then I can.
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, that's an awesome question. I think the first step is always identifying the problem. Look at your community, look at your surroundings, and identify the problem. And then the second step is talking to others, people who are impacted by that problem, including yourself, and identifying steps to that solution. That's what this presentation was about, and this is the exact kind of question we really hope to hear at the end of a presentation like this. If Muslims are proactive, in other words, if they seek out the problem that needs to be solved, so many more of them will in fact be solved. No one's coming to help us. We have to help ourselves, and that's the exact right position to be in. So find the problems and then start asking around by the people impacted by those problems how we can go about solving them. Good.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi
Wa
wa
alaikum
barakatuh.
assalam.
So I like that you design a cause and kind of the money needs to go to the that designated cause, as we know and as we have heard even in the Harvard conference. So, and I like that you guys are respecting that kind of. And if you were to change the goals, the goal or the cause you would donate to at the end of the line or so, can you still do that?
You mean as a donor if you pick a cause? So let's say this masjid creates a cause for electricity, and you as donors fund that cause, that fund. Those funds are used for the electricity. And if you want to donate to a different cause, you just give there and just check that one. So it's you pick it and you track it. And that's pretty much it. Some people also ask like whether they can withdraw that money back to their account. And once you give something to Waqf, it stays there. So I told them, look, once you give, you cannot stop doing good deeds even if you wanted to. You started a machine that's just going to keep on working whether you like it or not, right? So that's pretty much how it is. I hope that answers the question.
That's also differentiate that between the waqf in a bank. You don't want to get your money back. You don't want to get the profit.
Yeah.
Is this product for non-institutional people? Like, I think one of the questions, maybe from what Janan was saying, is can any individual be part of this? Are you guys looking for institutions?
So any individual can be part of this. We are creating now a network of strong nonprofits which have different causes. So any individual can come there, pick a cause, donate, and track it. On the other side, any institution can join us as well to get sustainable funding for these projects. So we're essentially building a network of strong institutions that don't depend on this ad hoc fundraising every year. And we're building a network of Muslims who are thinking proactively. So yeah.
Got it.
Assalamu alaikum. I just have two comments. First, adding to Brother Ali comments about the profit like you are making. Just want to explain, like I'm in the domain, so 1% is nothing to keep the platform up and running. And like in addition to your, mashallah, dedicated as a full-time job. So it's, not a concern at all. So I would love to see one waqf in the platform just to support the platform itself. Because I know like it's like if you want to keep it scalable and like decent, it's like not a very minimal stuff. The other comment to, sister question, I would love to see some very intuitive resources where like it's not for me, like I'm in the domain, like for anyone who can like watch a small animated video to know how to use the platform, the causes. I would love to see some like those resources, and I would love to contribute to, educate people about this one, and inshallah to get it into something really big. Jazakallah khairan.
Jazakallah khairan. I don't know if there's a way to reach out to you after this, if you have some group or something, or I can maybe ask Brother Bilal to share my contact information to keep in touch here. But one of our goals with this is also to start creating these proactive communities. It's not only about the after fund, right? We were at Oxford. We were talking to young intellectuals who want to join us on this journey, on spreading the word of how we as Muslims need to act. So this is not only about the Awqaf, this is about creating proactive communities, joining forces together, spreading the word out there so more and more Muslims know about this. So we are really open for that as well. So inshallah, maybe Brother Bilal can share my contact information after that. We can stay in touch and see what we can do here in this community as well, inshallah.
Last question, inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum
For this beautiful idea. Do you guys have any plans of having meetings one-to-one with the board of trustees of each Islamic institution, because they are the decision makers of creating the waqf? Because a lot of they might have a fear of making, when they do their fundraising, when you talk to them about investing whatever money is sitting in the bank, they have a fear of making a loss of that money. It's like, well, this is not our money because this is our community money. They are entrusted us with the money, they give it to us. We don't want to just take a risk of. So do you have any plans like setting up a meeting with them directly, or how to convince them to invest that money in to create a
Thank you so much for asking that question. I mean, for every Islamic institution that set up a waqf, we talk to decision makers to set up a waqf, and once they sit down with us and they see how it really works and deeper, like the mechanics of it, you know, they realize that that's something they actually needed many years ago. And in terms of investing itself, I mean, if Brother Omar can share more.
Yeah, sure. So whenever you engage in an investment, a responsible party will ask you a series of questions. They'll walk you through a process, right? And that process starts with what are your goals and how much risk can you handle? And anybody involved in that investment process is gonna maintain a relationship so that you can adjust those different parameters over the course of your relationship, right? So those are perfectly valid concerns. And as the community's needs and as their risks change, so too must their investments. So yeah, I think we're equipped to handle those questions and generally speaking have the tools to create resources.
And just one more thing, very quickly. When people talk about sadaqah jariyah, when people talk about lasting good, the current way of doing it is building a water well, right? So we had a guy who reached out to us. He told us, look, I built a water well and it went dry within 17 months. And they're like, okay, we had good intentions. Alhamdulillah, you know, what can you do? But we as Muslims, we need to stop thinking about just good intentions. We need to really focus that our donations really make the impact. So for example, even if you invest in a real estate, something can happen to that real estate, right? But the investments in these halal funds, they invest in hundreds of different real estate all around the world. So God forbid that there's a problem in some part of the world, there are others who are continuously, you know, still making impact, right? So it's much more robust system than building a water well, water fountain. Or imagine a waqf that we created in Pakistan, for example, where your single donation continuously builds new water wells. So like, if one goes dry, there are others who are continuously. So like even like in terms of risk and investment, it's much less risky than just like building one single thing and hoping that it will endure, because this is actively creating new impact.
Jazakallah khair. Thank you so much. And you know, if anybody has any other questions, feel free to come up to our speakers. Jazakallah khair. Subhanakallah bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa ant. Nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.
Jazakallah khairan. Assalamu alaikum once more. We are available for questions if anyone wants to come and further ask.
Yeah. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. I know some of you have already bought some of the goods. This is going to the orphans of Sudan in Gaza, Palestine. So I urge you to please pay whatever you can to get this stuff. It's very expensive. You would pay a lot for it in the markets. We don't want it to be here, so please pay for it. So the money will go to Charity Week. Jazakumullahu khair.